My name is David Caldwell. I am 36 years old. When people ask why I practically raised my little brother Liam, my mind always goes back to a single terrifying memory. The first thing I remember from that day is the ceiling. White acoustic tiles, water-stained and warped. A fluorescent light buzzing overhead at a frequency so low and harsh that your brain registers the vibration without your conscious mind knowing why you feel violently sick. I was lying in a cold hospital bed, waking up in the trauma ward. I had just survived a brutal 7-hour surgery. The exhausted doctors in the ICU told me later that my right femur was completely shattered, held together now by thick titanium rods after a catastrophic accident. A commercial delivery truck had blown a tire and pinned me against a concrete loading dock where I was working an extra weekend shift just to keep our electricity from being shut off. I was physically broken, but as I lay there, I only cared that I could still provide for Liam. 10 years later, I walked into my little brother's wedding, believing I had finally earned one peaceful seat in a room full of people who never knew what that survival cost us. I did not come looking for applause. I did not expect heartfelt speeches about the years I worked until my hands bled, or the nights I came home too exhausted to chew my own food because every spare dollar went into his college tuition. I came simply because the boy I protected and raised was becoming a husband. For one evening, I just wanted to feel proud without having to justify my existence to anyone. The country club was immaculate, absurdly expensive, and dripping with that heavy, polished silence that rich rooms always possess, as if even the oxygen had been trained not to breathe too loudly. I navigated through the sea of designer suits and silk gowns, found my lonely table near the edge of the sprawling reception hall, smiled at the extravagant white peonies, and reached for the silver-trimmed name card beside my plate. Then, my entire body went ice cold. It did not say brother of the groom. It did not say family. It said in perfect flowing script, uneducated brother, living off the groom's success. For a split second, I thought the dim romantic lighting was playing tricks on my eyes. Then, the laughter started. It wasn't the awkward chuckle of strangers who were confused. It was the synchronized, deliberate laughter of people who had clearly been waiting for me to turn that card over. The bride's extended family covered their mouths, leaning into each other, laughing like my public humiliation was the evening's main entertainment. I looked across the room at my brother. All I could think was, not tonight. I will not be the reason his perfect day shatters. I decided to swallow the bitter shame, place the card face down, and leave quietly through the side doors. But before my heel could pivot, Liam caught my arm. He stood up so aggressively that his heavy mahogany chair scraped violently against the marble floor. He didn't look at me. He looked straight at the head table, locking eyes with his future father-in-law, William Kensington. Liam's voice was deathly calm, but it possessed a sharp, metallic edge that sliced through the laughter of 300 elite guests. "You just made the most expensive mistake of your life," Liam said. "Before I tell you what happens next, tell me what the weather is like where you are right now, and whether it matches the chilling atmosphere this room just plunged into." The ballroom went dead silent. It felt like someone had suffocated the string quartet with a heavy blanket. Liam was still gripping my arm, and every single person who had been laughing a second ago suddenly looked like they had forgotten how to exhale. I could feel the stiff cardstock pressing against my palm, that vile, printed sentence, sitting there like undeniable proof that cruelty had been drafted, approved, and carefully weaponized beside my dinner plate. This was no typo. Mistakes do not come in custom-ordered calligraphy. Mistakes do not patiently wait at a $50,000 dinner table for one specific target to find them. Across the room, the bride's father, William Kensington, slowly stood up. I had not known his true nature when I walked in. To me, he had only been the wealthy patriarch smiling in engagement photographs, the powerful man everyone seemed endlessly terrified to disappoint. He adjusted his tailored jacket, looked at Liam, and gave a small, condescending laugh. "Sit down," William ordered. "You're embarrassing yourself." Liam did not move an inch. "Explain the card." William glanced at it like he had barely noticed the text before, which was mathematically impossible. "It was a harmless joke," he said smoothly. "Your brother looks thick-skinned enough to handle one." A few guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but nobody dared to speak. That was the exact moment I understood something profoundly painful about high society. Some people had laughed because they genuinely thought it was funny. Others had laughed because they were terrified not to, and the rest had stayed completely quiet because silence is the easiest costume for cowardice. Watching this unfold made my brain process the sheer cruelty of the elite, leaving me feeling slightly sick to my stomach. It reminded me of the cold, unfeeling environment of a hospital waiting room where empathy is absent. I kept my voice absolutely steady and asked, "If it was just a light-hearted joke, William, why was I the punchline?" His polite smile thinned into a razor blade. "Because people like you take everything personally, David." Liam's hand tightened around my arm, but I subtly shifted my weight, not letting him step forward. "Not yet." William looked at Liam, his voice dropping into a patronizing register. "You should be very careful tonight, Liam. A young man in your position should deeply understand the value of good connections." He nodded toward the crystal chandeliers and the extravagant floral arrangements, treating the room like a museum of his own success. "You have been welcomed into a family that can open doors you never would have reached alone. Consider my empire a locked safe, and I alone hold the combination to it." I heard the thinly veiled insult perfectly. So did Liam. I said, "He reached every single door because he worked tirelessly for it." William looked at me with open amusement. "And you helped, I'm sure. Everyone has a sad backstory. Maybe your dear grandmother gave you an old pocket watch to pawn, or perhaps you sold some cheap trinket at a local auction to pay for his books. But sacrifice does not make someone educated. It does not make someone refined. It certainly does not make someone equal." A quiet gasp rippled from somewhere near the head table. My face burned with indignation, but I flatly refused to look down at the marble floor tiles beneath my feet. I thought about the years I had worked the graveyard shift while other people slept under a cozy, secure ceiling at home. I thought about filling out his financial aid forms under a flickering fluorescent light until my eyes watered. I thought about quietly selling the only valuable heirloom I owned, a vintage Vacheron Constantine timepiece, and pretending I had simply lost it because I never wanted Liam to know what his college acceptance had cost my college. .www. Future. I locked eyes with the billionaire. "I never came here asking to be equal to your bank account. I came here as family." William leaned closer, his voice dripping with venom. "Family is not a word you use to force your way into rooms you do not belong in." Liam finally let go of my arm and stepped squarely beside me. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. "He belongs anywhere I stand." The joke was officially over. The punishment was about to begin. Until that exact second, the bride, Emily, had stood entirely frozen near the head table, pale beneath the soft glow of the reception lights. Her perfect face showed the first authentic emotion I had seen from her side of the aisle all night. William turned toward his daughter with a severe warning in his eyes, the kind of look that reminds a child who controls their grand inheritance and future wealth. "Stay out of this, Emily," he commanded. But she did not stay out of it. She walked deliberately toward Liam first, not her father. And that one small, courageous choice fundamentally changed the power dynamic of the entire room. "Did you know about the card?" Liam asked her, his voice breaking just enough for me to hear the raw pain beneath the anger. Emily shook her head rapidly, her eyes wide with horror. "No, Liam, I swear to God I didn't." Then she looked directly at me. "David, I am so deeply sorry." Before I could even acknowledge her apology, William laughed under his breath. "Do not apologize for people who are aggressively looking for offense." Emily spun around to face him. "That was not an offense, Dad. That was pure humiliation." Emily's mother rushed forward, her silk dress rustling frantically. She smiled tightly at the surrounding guests, as if a polite expression could magically stitch up a wound this deep. "Sweetheart, please not here. There are important people watching." Emily looked around the sprawling ballroom, and for the very first time, I think she really saw what kind of people were watching. Some looked mildly embarrassed. Some were clearly entertained, treating our lives like a reality show. A few were already whispering eagerly into their phones. She raised her chin, her voice steady. "Good. Let them watch." William's face hardened into a mask of pure granite. "You are emotional, Emily." She answered, "No, Dad. I am finally awake." That simple sentence landed harder than a physical blow. I saw Liam look at his future wife with a volatile mix of hope and terror fighting across his face. Emily turned to me again. "He told me what you did for him, David. He told me you gave up your own college dreams. He told me you worked 2 grueling manual labor jobs. He told me you raised him when both of you were still grieving kids. I believed him, but I don't think I truly grasped the heavy reality of it until this exact moment. William snapped. You understood the overly sentimental version. Emily faced him fully then, stepping squarely into his space. What version would you prefer? The one where a young man lost his parents and still broke his back to keep his little brother fed? The one where David built Liam's future from nothing while everyone in this room just inherited theirs? Or the one where you thought the appropriate way to welcome a hero into our family was to mock his poverty in front of 300 strangers? William took a menacing step toward her. You are too young and naive to understand how parasites attach themselves to opportunity. In the real world, people like this are liabilities. Treating them like equals is bad business, and I don't write an insurance policy for bad business. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she absolutely refused to let them fall. No, Dad, I understand perfectly. You think love is only safe when you can financially audit it. The atmosphere in the room shifted violently. People who had chuckled at me minutes earlier now looked deeply uncomfortable. Not because they had suddenly grown a moral compass, but because cruelty had abruptly stopped looking elegant. Reputation had entered the room, and for the elite, reputation is infinitely more terrifying than morality. Emily reached out and tightly intertwined her fingers with Liam's. If you insult his brother one more time, she told her father, I will walk out of my own wedding. William stared at her as if she were speaking a foreign language. You would throw away your entire family, your inheritance, over this? She answered, No, you are the one throwing it away. The wedding could have been saved right there. All it would have taken was one honest sentence of humility, one brief admission that the place card was a vile mistake. But powerful men rarely apologize when they still believe punishment is an available option. William straightened his broad shoulders, looked across the ballroom, and gave the kind of calm, dead-eyed smile that made my blood run cold. Very touching, William said softly. But this is not a theater, and I am not the villain in your little tragedy. He casually slipped his phone from his tuxedo pocket and made no effort to hide the call. Daniel, he said smoothly when his corporate fixer answered, I need you to call Harrington and Vale tonight. Tell them our $50 million development account is permanently under review if they proceed with their new architectural hire from the Caldwell family. Liam went perfectly still. Emily grabbed her father's arm in sheer panic. What are you doing? William covered the receiver. Teaching consequences. Then he returned to the call. Also, contact the State Youth Foundation. The Inner City Tech Hub grant connected to David Caldwell is to be suspended immediately. I will not have my name attached to a family that creates public scenes to solicit cheap sympathy. For a solid moment, I forgot how to breathe. Watching this corporate execution felt exactly like waking up in the ICU after my accident. It was that identical, paralyzing helplessness of watching a massive delivery truck destroy my trajectory. Only this time, the impact wasn't shattering a femur, it was shattering my brother's hard-earned career. William was performing a ruthless financial surgery on our lives, designed to inflict maximum psychological trauma. The job offer was devastating, but it was aimed at Liam. The community grant was different. For 3 exhausting years, I had been trying to build a tech hub for at-risk teenagers who needed resume help, coding skills, and basic digital literacy. Kids who were smart but invisible. Kids whose parents worked night shifts. Kids exactly like Liam had once been. William had pinpointed the one fragile thing in my life that felt bigger than my own survival, and he was casually crushing it just because I existed in his airspace. Liam lunged forward, his voice shaking with raw fury, but I stepped forcefully in front of him, planting my hands on his chest. No, I ordered, my voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. Do not let him turn your justifiable anger into his legal evidence. William smiled a cold, hollow victory. Enjoy your little moral high ground tonight. By tomorrow morning, you will intimately understand the difference between fragile pride and real power. Then, he turned and walked out of the reception hall with the absolute calm of a man who believed the airstrike had already been ordered. The next morning, my phone rang at 5:15 a.m. The sun hadn't even breached the city skyline yet. I knew exactly who it was. Liam's name lit up the cracked screen of my phone. When I answered, he didn't even bother saying hello. He did it, Liam rasped. His voice sounded hollow, completely scraped out by a sleepless night of panic. The firm? I asked quietly. Gone. Harrington and Vale sent an automated rejection email at 4:30 a.m. I closed my eyes, resting my head against the cool wall. I wasn't shocked, but the mechanical predictability of billionaire cruelty didn't make the reality sting any less. Liam had built that architectural portfolio piece by piece off coding on an overheating laptop while eating cheap ramen for 3 consecutive years. That job offer wasn't charity, it was the manifestation of our survival. "Check your inbox," Liam added, his breath shuddering. I opened my laptop on the kitchen counter. There it was, a legally sterilized message from the State Youth Foundation. My application for the Tech Hub grant had been postponed pending comprehensive internal review. Pending review meant buried permanently. It meant a man with limitless wealth had casually decided that at-risk teenagers shouldn't learn to code simply because he wanted to punish my pride. An hour later, Emily arrived at my cramped apartment. Without the designer gown and the flawless makeup, wearing faded jeans and exhausted eyes, she looked infinitely more real than she had in the ballroom. Liam followed her inside, pacing my worn rug like a caged animal. Emily sat at my chipped kitchen table and set her phone squarely between us. "There's something you both need to see," she whispered. She pulled up an encrypted email chain and a piece of security camera footage she had managed to download from the venue's server. The place cards had not been a careless mistake. The insulting line had been submitted directly by William's personal estate attorney, a notoriously ruthless fixer named Silas Vance, a full 3 days before the event. There were explicit notes specifying that it be placed exactly at my assigned seat. "He planned it," Liam said, his fists trembling at his sides. Emily nodded, tears finally breaking free. "I didn't know. David, you have to believe me." "I believe you," I said softly. Then, she opened a hidden voice memo. "My cousin secretly recorded this in my father's study last month. She was too terrified to share it until she saw what he did last night." William's arrogant, booming voice filled my tiny kitchen. "The brother is a liability," the recording played. "People who survive on scraps always try to drag you down to their pathetic level. If Liam marries into this family, he learns total obedience. If he refuses, we teach him absolute scarcity. We'll lock them in a legal trap so tight they'll be begging for a hospital bed just to get a moment of rest." Hearing his voice made me physically sick. My brain immediately shifted from profound grief into tactical survival mode. This wasn't some petty internet venting post about how parents stole my inheritance to buy brother a car. This was a systematic psychological assassination orchestrated by an apex predator. Emily looked down at her hands, her voice trembling with disgust. "My father's empire is built on blood. Years ago, he orchestrated a massive fraud. It was a textbook forged power of attorney family theft. He used a forged POA to seize control of his own brother's inheritance, locking him out of the family business entirely. He wields that stolen power of attorney like a weapon to this day. He drives his $250,000 Porsche and finances aggressive asset recovery firms to bankrupt anyone who dares to speak up against him." Liam stopped pacing. He snatched his own phone from the counter. "I'm posting this recording right now. I'll completely ruin him." "No," I commanded, my voice dropping to a dead, flat calm. Liam stared at me like I had lost my mind. "David, he destroyed your community project." "Exactly," I said. "And if we post this audio right now, he will hire an elite PR crisis team to spin it by noon. He'll tell the media we are bitter, unstable opportunists trying to extort him because a wedding joke caused an argument. He knows exactly how to survive a scandal if it looks like a messy family dispute." Emily understood first. Her eyes widened. "So, what do we do?" "We ask him for a private family meeting," I said, leaning forward. "We tell him we want peace. We tell him we want to apologize. We let him think he still holds all the cards and has broken our spirits." Liam's jaw tightened as the strategy clicked into place. "So, we let him talk." "Yes," I nodded, feeling a cold resolve settle into my bones. Arrogant men always talk too much when they think they are invincible. The meeting was set for Saturday afternoon at the Kensington estate in Westchester. As we drove through the massive iron gates, the grounds were bustling with catering staff setting up massive tents for an upcoming anniversary party. Walking into the grand foyer felt intensely disorienting. The sterile, echoing acoustics of the marble hall were eerily identical to the ICU, where I had spent agonizing weeks recovering from my accident. I glanced up at the intricately painted ceiling. then down at the imported Spanish ceramic tiles, feeling the exact same cold, analytical focus in my brain that I used when mapping out my survival. William waited in his mahogany study. He didn't bother to stand when Liam, Emily, and I entered. Beside him sat Silas Vance, his notoriously ruthless legal advisor and trusted estate attorney, a man who specialized in aggressive corporate asset recovery. The room was illuminated by a harsh, modern fluorescent lamp that completely stripped the warmth from the antique bookshelves. "Let's be incredibly efficient," William began, his voice dripping with condescension. "I assume you are here because the harsh reality of poverty has finally broken you. You probably spent the night frantically Googling how to get legal revenge on toxic parents, only to realize that in the real world, wealth always dictates the final verdict." Liam's jaw tightened, but I placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "We are here," I said evenly, "because your daughter requested one final private conversation before this completely escalates." William scoffed, treating our presence like a minor trauma he needed to quickly bandage and dismiss. He smoothly pulled a leather-bound checkbook from his desk drawer. "I'm prepared to offer you a highly lucrative insurance payout, practically a permanent policy of wealth, if you quietly and permanently disappear from Liam's life. Think of it as overdue compensation. You clearly harbor deep resentment that the golden child gets everything while I pay the ultimate price. Isn't that your sad little narrative? Take the money, David. Go buy yourself a brand new Porsche and leave my family alone." I stared at the check, feeling absolutely nothing but profound pity for him. "You genuinely think I raised my brother just to sell him back to the highest bidder?" I asked softly. "My grandmother didn't leave me a sprawling empire. She left me a single, beautiful Vacheron Constantine timepiece. I cherished that old pocket watch, locking it away in a safe and guarding the combination with my life. Eventually, I sold it at a local auction to keep Liam fed and enrolled in school. I didn't sacrifice my youth to hand his future over to a tyrant." Before William could interrupt, I placed my phone face up on the glass coffee table. "You see, William, arrogance is your fatal flaw. You thought your past fraud involving that fraudulent POA to steal your own brother's company was buried forever." I hit play on the hidden camera recording, broadcasting the leaked footage loudly into the dead silence of the study. The sound of his own arrogant confessions, detailing exactly how he ruined lives for sport, filled the room. The color drained from William's face so rapidly, it looked like a literal surgery was being performed on him without anesthesia. His impenetrable ego shattered completely, just like my femur had shattered beneath that delivery truck. He had walked blindly into a completely inescapable legal trap. Breaking the fourth wall for a moment, if you have ever dealt with a narcissistic bully like William, drop a comment below and tell me exactly how you handled them. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're loving this takedown. Seriously, let me know your thoughts in the comment section and hit subscribe for more daily stories of pure justice. Emily stepped forward, looking down at the man who used to terrify her. "Your granddaughter now. Her body next week is going to be incredibly quiet when the board of directors hears this audio," she said, her voice completely steady. "Keep your money, Dad. Keep the estate. We're done." We turned and walked out, leaving the most powerful man in Westchester utterly speechless in his own fortress. We didn't say a single word until we were miles away from the iron gates of Westchester. Then, Emily opened her laptop in the passenger seat, took a deep breath, and finally hit post. I did not want the narrative driven by blind, chaotic rage. That mattered to me immensely. I did not edit the video with sensational music, flashy graphics, or hysterical insults. We simply posted the high-resolution photo of the cruel place card, the wedding planner's damning email chain, and the crystal-clear audio recording from William's study, accompanied by a factual, devastatingly simple statement. I wrote that I had attended my brother's wedding as the man who raised him, that the bride's billionaire father had publicly humiliated me for sport, and that when given a private chance to apologize, he had arrogantly attempted to bribe me to disappear. I explicitly stated that this was not a petty dispute about a ruined reception. It was a stark warning about what happens when immensely powerful people decide that the lives, dignity, and futures of working-class families are entirely disposable. Then, I closed the laptop, walked into my tiny kitchen, and methodically brewed a pot of cheap coffee. I needed my hands to do something utterly ordinary while my entire universe shifted on its axis. By noon the following day, The story had exploded across Reddit. By the evening commute, it was dominating TikTok algorithms and Instagram reels. People from all over the globe were furiously sharing the image of the place card. Teachers flooded the comments section, writing passionately about impoverished students who desperately needed community programs like my tech hub. Exhausted nurses wrote about pulling brutal double shifts to support their younger siblings. Countless people from every corner of the country shared heartbreaking stories of sacrificing their youth to raise someone quietly, only to be treated like their devotion was worthless because it didn't come with a trust fund or a prestigious last name. One comment, pinned near the top with 80,000 likes, simply read, "I gave up everything to raise my little sister too, and when she graduated, no one ever saved me a seat." Those messages did something profound to my soul that mere public support could never achieve. They reminded me that humiliation is specifically designed to isolate you, to make you feel microscopic and alone, but unvarnished truth has the miraculous power to return you to a massive community you never even knew was waiting to catch you. The corporate fallout was instantaneous and catastrophic. Harrington and Vail released a panicked public statement claiming their hiring offer had been paused due to inappropriate external pressure, and rapidly announced a complete overhaul of their internal ethics procedures. They immediately offered Liam a senior architectural position with a massive signing bonus. He politely thanked them, then firmly declined, stating he preferred to build his career at a firm that didn't require global public shaming to remember its own integrity. Later that same afternoon, my phone rang. It was the State Youth Foundation. They profusely apologized, officially restored my grant review, and fast-tracked the approval. Within just 1 week, my Second Chance Tech Hub received more organic crowdfunding donations than I could have realistically raised in 5 years. Complete strangers sent $20, $5, sometimes just a message saying, "Someone believed in me once, too." That broke my heart open more than the billionaire's insult ever could. For the first time in my 36 years, the heavy burden I had always carried alone was finally being carried by thousands of hands. The Kensington empire began to fracture under the immense public scrutiny. The corporate board launched an aggressive internal investigation into William's past dealings. Several massive city partnerships tied to his hotel developments were immediately suspended pending review. He was stripped of multiple honorary board positions. But his most devastating, unrecoverable loss was entirely personal. His daughter never went back to that sprawling estate. Emily and Liam moved into a modest second-floor apartment just 3 blocks down from mine. It had creaky floorboards, second-hand furniture, and infinitely more peace than that Westchester mansion ever contained. 3 months later, my tech hub officially opened its doors. On the very first Saturday, 22 teenagers showed up. Liam volunteers his weekends there, teaching basic coding. Emily runs the mock interview workshops. What a cruel billionaire tried to crush for his own amusement became infinitely more powerful than anything I could have ever built in isolation. The deepest, most satisfying revenge wasn't watching William Kensington lose his prestigious contracts or his hollow titles. It was watching the exact project he mocked become a massive beacon of hope for hundreds of people. It was seeing profound shame transmute into public service and deep pain evolve into education. Money can buy fleeting attention. It can buy extravagant comfort. It can even buy terror for a short while. But it can never buy back the one invaluable thing William lost forever, the respect of the child who finally saw him clearly. So, I have to ask you, if you were standing in my worn-out shoes that night at the reception, would you have stayed quiet just to keep the peace? Or would you have stood up and let the truth cost whatever it had to cost? My incredible team and I are always striving to bring you these intense, fictional revenge stories that feel visceral, emotional, and profoundly meaningful. This story is crafted for your entertainment, education, and deep reflection. We genuinely hope you take away a powerful lesson about self-respect, the beauty of healing, and the unyielding strength to move forward without ever looking back.